Hello, everyone. Welcome to the Supply Chain Talk. We have a beautiful topic today, leadership and career growth, nurturing the next supply chain generation. Before we move into the topics, and I invite on our virtual stage my beautiful guests, I would like first to encourage you to engage with our audience, either on LinkedIn, if you follow us or live on LinkedIn, or engage with us to get the full episode experience by registering via Business Reporter website. So I hope you will be active because the best comment, the best question, challenge and compliment will be rewarded with a Supply Chain Talk mug, which will be couriered by my colleagues at the Business Reporter. So I would like to kick off this episode with a statistic which was recently published by LinkedIn. According to a recent LinkedIn report, 94% of employees would stay at a company longer if it is invested in their careers. And we know, I was an employee, I worked 2 decades for big corporations, and sometimes I wondered, would I have stayed longer if the career progression would have been in line with my career ambitions? So this is a powerful report. And today with my panelists, we will discuss about leadership styles, leadership techniques, and also career growth strategies for the new era of supply chain. And if yesterday or 5 years ago or 10 years ago, supply chain CEOs, the CEOs in board of directors meetings were all about, had a background from finance, from HR, from operations. We are seeing now the board of directors welcoming, as part of the succession planning, leaders, senior leaders with supply chain background. So I would like now to invite on our virtual stage to debate this beautiful topic. My first panelist, Samantha Stevenson. If you can please unmute yourself. Thank you. Hello, Samantha.
Hello, hi Anna.
Welcome to our Supply Chain Talk.
Thank you for having me.
It's good to have you. A few words about Samantha. Samantha is the procurement manager for Center Parks in the UK and Ireland, a leading short break provider. I even called it in preparation to this talk show, and it's fantastic business model. Samantha has an MBA from the University of Staffordshire and is a member of the Charter Institute of Procurement and Supply, and has been a member of the Aspiring Women Council at Center Parks. Great. Samantha is passionate about bringing young people to the profession of procurement and making a difference through sustainable procurement, which is very close to my heart. Well done, Samantha.
Thank you.
Good to have you here today. So my second panelist, please, if you can unmute and turn on your camera, Julia Hilko. Welcome to our
thank you.
Supply Chain Talk. Julia is the Supply Chain Manager, Strategic Infrastructure for National Grid. Julia is leading a strategic industry collaboration to create and maintain a skilled, resilient, and inclusive workforce to deliver net zero goals. Also a co-chair of Women in National Grid Network and is passionate about promoting cross-industry engagement on gender equality via the Women Network forums. We need more women in supply chain. Julia, I totally agree with you. It's good to have you both here. So as you know, the format of our supply chain talk is we start sharing our views about a news item. And for those guests and viewers, please have a look at our chat box where we have our news item. And the news item is about nurturing career growth in the new era of supply chain. And it talks about what are the skills required for the new generation of leadership. And the article talks about deep technological expertise coupled with expansive communication skills and expansive leadership and cross-functional communication skills. So it's a lot to ask from someone who wants to grow a career in supply chain. So I would like to invite you, Samantha. What do you think about, what are your views on this news item?
Yeah, I agreed with it a lot, to be fair, because I think we definitely have more roles and more hats to play. There's definitely a change in how we are seen from being a support function, and definitely can be seen to be adding value. And I think in order to do that, you've got to work collaboratively and cross-functionally. You know, you've got to work with the other departments within your business. So yes, there's a lot to do, but I think it also gives you a bigger platform to make a difference, and gives you, you know, more enjoyment in your role, because, you know, you're not just doing the same thing day in, day out. There's a lot more to be involved in.
A very dynamic job that requires, yeah, you can't get bored if you are in supply chain. I would,
No.
as someone who did this job for 2 decades, yes, I would agree. Julia, what's your view?
I just thank you for Anna for asking. I think first of all, I'd like to probably lay the base and share with you what's the challenge that we are looking at the supply chain from at National Grid. And I think it's really interesting, and it's changing the perspective on the supply chain management because of that. So we need to deliver in the next 5 years 6 times more than we delivered over the last 30 years. The challenge is unprecedented in the number of projects that we will have, and we are investing twice as much in the next 5 years than we did in the last 5 years. So for clean energy delivery, we're going to be investing £60 billion. And because of that, we're looking at really increased risks in terms of equipment and skills in the supply chain. So if we continue delivering in the way that we always delivered, continue securing supply of equipment and of talent in the same way, we're not going to be able to do that. So that's why we need to start thinking differently. And because of that, it just changes the nature of the role as well, and the way that we work within our business and also with the supply chain. So in my current role and, you know, in our team, I think interpersonal, interdepartmental, you know, cross-organizational relationships are extremely important. We have a very wide stakeholder group that we need to engage internally. So I'm working day to day with procurement, with legal team, with policy team, with training, with workforce planning, and that's just internally. So I think definitely I can see that perception and the importance of supply chain management is changing rapidly, and it's a very exciting place to be in.
It's insightful. Thank you for sharing the challenges that come with lots of opportunities, Julia. And it seems that we are in full alignment, because the next supply chain leadership, the next level supply chain leadership requires a lot, because requires, as you both said, cross-functional collaboration. It's a lot of cross-functional collaboration, more than 5 years before, because the pandemic was like a tough teacher, and also came with huge opportunities to accelerate our communication skills, our collaboration. Supply chain cannot be done in isolation. And then I would like to open the discussion and the debate with the first topic on our talk show. building essential skills for the modern supply chain. For those who attend our supply chain talk and for our audience, what would you say from your experience, Amanda? What are the essential skills for the modern supply chain, for the current reality?
I think relationships are still top. People by people, you need those relationships, especially when you're asking for favors after favors with different departments, and you've got timescales that just come out of nowhere. So relationship building is definitely one of them. And also, I think that the art of talking is one for me that concerns me. We're all very well connected. We all communicate in this day and age instantly. We've got Teams at work, we've got email, everybody's texting, WhatsApping, but sometimes you need to pick up the phone and you need to have a face-to-face conversation. And I think remembering that, and especially with the younger generations coming through into the industry, I think knowing which medium of communication to use and when to use it to get the best result is one that does concern me. And I think sometimes it's one of the things which you have to support on, because the natural communication method tends to be, I'll just send an email. It's easier. But I think that's the big one for me, communication, and in particular the art of talking and keeping that as an important skill.
Would you welcome to your team only someone who has high communication skills, or would you say what other essential skill would you look for in a supply chain?
No, so I think communication, and again, that can be taught and nurtured. I know some people are happier doing it, but it doesn't mean that that you can't support somebody in that. No, I think confidence to speak up and challenge, organization, being able to prioritize, decision making. There's so many skills now which you do need. And again, not everyone's probably going to come with all of them as their top skill, but I think probably the biggest one is the right attitude and the attitude to learn. And then I think the rest of this you can help nurture.
I love it. I like to say that you can teach someone a hard skill. You can teach someone a job, how to do demand planning or supply planning or logistics, but you can't teach someone how to behave if the character is not there. So they say, let's hire character. And I think supply chain is so visible. You really need to communicate intensively, regularly, in a very well articulated manner. You cannot hide.
No.
So you are very exposed to so many stakeholders, internal and external. So a lot of soft skills you mentioned there, Samantha, which I really enjoy. Julia, what's your view? What would you say? What are
I think I totally agree with Samantha. I think interpersonal skills are just one of the key potentially for me, because it's all about people in the supply chain. And yes, it is about data. Yes, it is about the setting out the right kind of structure and the right policies and regulations. But a lot of it is about people, and depending on the relationship you have with your suppliers, your success depends on that, right? On your initiatives. I would say that supply chain specialists and professionals, they're probably more generalist in their nature rather than specialists. I think just for example, what worked for me and what I did over my career path. So I started with international business degree, but I worked in procurement and project management. And I feel like the combination of all of that is really serving me well in the supply chain, because the relationships I built in the procurement experience, and the kind of when I did my SIPs as well, the MSIPs, I wrote the final dissertation was actually on the security of supply chain, because I did that during pandemic, and it was like the top topic, I think. And then definitely project management is helping to kind of keep everything structured and ticking and delivered. But I really wouldn't say that that's the requirement to be in the supply chain. So I think your previous education or your previous experience can vary quite a lot, because yes, it's good to understand your industry, and it's good to understand maybe what's required and what's the bigger picture, and what would be your challenges. But I agree, a lot of it is about personality and kind of the attitudes of the professionals.
Yeah, I agree too, Julia. And actually from our team, I think prior to joining us, only 2 people had previously worked in procurement, because like you were saying, you need that generalist background, and actually then a lot of the skills can be transferred. So yes, I agree.
And would you say that what we are seeing today as the new reality of supply chain, very demanding, and which requires a lot of risk management, a lot of resilience, does the new supply chain come with a new demand on a certain skill, which is a part, something which we have not covered? I don't know, something like a really analytical mind, or someone who is very open mind, or someone who has very, as you said, project management. But is there anything else that requires, it's like a must if you hire tomorrow someone in your team to deal with your complexity you were talking about, Julia? You said today we are being asked to deliver 20 times more than 5 years ago. So what is it that you are looking for? One example, something critical you cannot compromise.
I think it is really varied, Anna. I think it's hard to just pinpoint it to just one area, because we are looking at supply chain holistically, right? So I think it's very important to understand the bigger picture, because in our supply chain kind of area, we're looking not just at equipment, we're looking at skills, we're looking at policy and regulation. So, for example, if you like, just some of the examples is like, how can we ensure the visibility of demand, and how can we ensure that we can book that demand availability in the future? So that is where your critical analytical skills will come through. But then also, if you're looking at the skills, for example, and how can we collaborate with the industry, and this is what we're looking right now at in the electricity transmission industry, right? To share training facilities, to share training programs. How can we grow attractiveness of the sector to bring in new talent from other sectors? So those are quite different, areas, and they would require slightly different skills. But I think understanding holistically and kind of strategically how you need to address, what areas you need to address, that would help at kind of leadership level to see, where your efforts need to go, and then you would have right people in the right areas supporting. So I'm sorry if I didn't answer specifically your question, but I think it's just more of a bigger picture.
And this is also, it gives the signal to our audiences that in order to build a career, a great career, a successful career in supply chain, you need to be curious. You need to dial in many areas, in many pockets of expertise: logistics, procurement, project management. The more, the better, and the higher the chance you have to grow a successful career. And I would ask you, Samantha, what would companies need to do in order to foster this, upskilling and reskilling of talent, of the internal talent?
I think if you employ and you recruit for attitude and behaviours, and you've got somebody who is curious, I liked your word there, because curious, wants to know more, wants to find out, wants to understand what difference that's making, and is just kind of passionate about making that difference to the end user. I think if you are then recruiting for those behaviours, and obviously, the generalist things, the multi things that obviously Julia's already mentioned that we have to do in supply chain. I think then if you've got the right behaviours, you can take them on that journey and promote from within, train from within, on the job training, so they get to know your business and how you do it, because we all do things differently. And at the same time, get that professional, theoretical, information and training so that you can utilise the two together. But I think growing from within really does benefit you as a company, because it's always difficult when when somebody leaves and you've got to try and fill the place, but also for somebody coming into that new culture. And in our team alone, 8 out of our 11 senior team have joined as procurement assistants in our team as our junior roles, and then have progressed through. And we're now getting the benefit of that because they understand the company and they understand the role. and they can move faster then without all these challenges that are coming at us.
Thank you, Samantha. And I have a question for you, Julia, from the audience, someone who is a regular and very passionate about our supply chain talk, Ashwar. Thank you so much for asking this beautiful question. What kind of budgets are allocated for the upskilling for supply chain professional within the organization? So what kind of budgets are allocated from your experience, or what would you say?
I wouldn't necessarily say call out any numbers here, because the budgets, of course, that there will be, there is a central budget as well that we have at the group level, of course, for learning and development. I can just potentially list different options and different opportunities for additional learning and development that can be provided within our company, for example, and even on my personal from my personal experience, and that could be approved and financed by the company. So, for example, I've been with National Grid for over 5 years now. I was sponsored for my MSIPs. I was sponsored for my management of portfolios training that I needed when I worked in a transformation team. I know that you can. There is a large suite of different LinkedIn learning offerings that we all have access to via our internal training. We can connect, and that's all available to us. Then there are different coaching opportunities as well. For example, we have Better Up coaching program that we can apply for, and that can be also sponsored. So I would say that definitely quite extensive opportunities for the organization to finance and support. I would say though that a lot of the development is coming from the on-the-job learning, because we have so much going on, and if you express interest in developing, you're definitely going to be put on something interesting, on an interesting project that you can support, and I would say that definitely gives a lot of real life experience that's invaluable.
I like it, and you gave so many ideas and concrete examples of how sources and sources of building budgets, building training budgets, learning and development, but also strategies of how to do that. And let's remember that in any company, trainings is just 10%. I think the 70-20-10 rule is shifting with the new reality, regardless it's supply chain or marketing, career development. To my opinion, the 70 becomes 50% on the job. So 50% you need to be doing a very good job and learn the job by doing it. 40%, I would say, is networking. As you said, Julia, is coaching, networking, finding a mentor, internal mentor or a non-biased mentor, an external mentor, and building relationships with associations, with different peers. And the rest is like 10% would be trainings, formal education. So I think we are witnessing a shift into networking more and building that powerful network internally and externally, even more in supply chain. Because if you don't know and I remember from my time, if you don't know the supply chain or the supply chain colleague, or you don't know you don't have a good relationship with the general manager of a factory, you cannot influence the product to be on shelf. So you need relationship, you need communication, you need a huge network. We have loads of questions. One question for you, Samantha, before we go into the next topic. So from Adeyemi, sorry if I don't pronounce it correctly, from Adeyemi, how can organization bridge the skill gap in the supply chain by balancing formal education with practical on-the-job training for early career professionals?
Yeah, so this is something I looked into and started doing. Well, about 8 years ago, I realised that the youngest person in our team was 39 at the time, and kind of set about how we then start to bring younger professionals into our business really in this area. So originally we did a lot more on the job training, and it was only the traditional SIPS routes that were open. But over the last few years, what we've done is we've got support from the top really to bring in apprenticeships. So we brought in 19-year-olds that have done their level 3 apprenticeships, which again shadowing senior members at the time, but also doing their level 3. And we've also done level 4 apprenticeships. But sometimes as well, if apprenticeship route isn't right for them, and they just would want to self-study, to be flexible around, their life really, we'll tailor whatever it is for them. But yes, what we do is give them time in the workplace to obviously complete that theoretical learning, but also we give them time to increase their on-the-job training by just shadowing a peer development as well, as much as anything. And all of our team realize that they've got a kind of duty of care to everybody else in that team to bring them on. Have I kind of answered that question or not? So balancing, but I think so. Balancing is probably is the key word there, because there is an expectation that some will have to be in your own time. You can't just give, we've all still got roles to do, so you couldn't just give a whole week up to doing the theoretical. So I think balancing probably is the key word there. And I think that just through open conversation with whoever the team member is, when you set out on that journey, and the expectations and how you will support them as much as you can in the workplace. But obviously sometimes, work does come first, and then it's how we can support them in their own time as well.
Yes, Samantha.
Just if I can add on that, we have a graduate program in National Grid, so there is rotation of graduates, and we are applying for, so we have a graduate now, we're applying for the next intake as well. I always welcome support of graduates in the team, because it's interesting for them. We can, carve out some interesting bits of projects that they can support with. It's great for us. It's like fresh ideas and some support with what we need to do. So I think it's great to have people training and connect, rotating maybe in your teams, that they can gain experience and you can gain support from them as well.
This is great with the apprenticeship program, which flows naturally now into the tech-driven supply chain. And we know the new reality of supply chain is about digital twin, about AI, about digitization of supply chain with robots picking the goods. I worked for a multinational companies, and in the middle of the UK, they built up this digital, totally digitized supply chain warehouse of the future, they call it. So as you can imagine, and I've seen, and I couldn't believe it, robots actually picking pallets, and also in real time reading the labels, the barcodes, and doing the palletizations and the grouping of to prepare the pallets for the customers. So it's a lot going on. We are seeing more and more tech-driven supply chain. So how are we preparing our workforce? What kind of skill of career development are we supporting them with? Samantha, please.
Well, I think the first thing I would say is that I'm not frightened of this tech revolution that's coming. And I think by bringing in the younger generations who are just used to tech, and that's part of their life, then I think we're going to learn a lot from them. AI hasn't really hit us much yet. I'm interested to see what that potentially could do, and then what opportunities that would bring for us to invest our time elsewhere and make a difference with more workload where we can add value, as opposed to at the moment there's a lot more resources needed to do things like the due diligence that we all have to do now. And a lot of the times you can be duplicating things and not really then getting down to the day job. So I think actually I'm quite interested in how that can hopefully help us in the future, and the data it can start to give us so that we can make the decisions with the data. We seem to spend a lot of our time on the moment producing the data, where I would just like to get to the point where the data is in front of us and actually we can start to use that in decision making to make decisions faster. Yeah, but like I say, it's not quite hit us as much yet. We've not got any robots. We take a few, but we've not got any at the moment.
Okay, Julia, what's your take on preparing your workforce for the tech-driven supply chain?
I think just first of all, maybe just to outline the nature of our projects, because it all is dependent on the nature of the supply chain we are working with, right? So in our case, the projects we are looking at is connecting all the new and upcoming wind farms that will be built at the offshore of the East Coast. So there's a lot of headlines happening, a lot of new substations. There are big capital projects there with, kind of in greenfields delivering new really big equipment. I'm trying to talk in the lay terms rather than calling the equipment by the proper name, but essentially it's all big capital projects with a lot of investment, a lot of time, many people involved in them. So I think in our case with our supply chain, it's all about challenging the norms. If we will continue delivering in the way that we always did, we will never be able to meet the net zero challenge. So it's all about using new technologies and testing with our supply chain where those new technologies can be applied. So, for example, with some of our suppliers of equipment, they're talking about off-site building, so whether they can spend more time in the factory rather than more time in the field, so that the way that they deliver changes the duration of the project, changes the cost of the project, changes the number of people that need to be employed. Similarly, if we're looking at the talent, there are new AI ways to train people, so they don't have to be on site, but they can have VR sets to be trained on the technical jobs. So I would say it's less about potentially factories and robots and AIs in that space, but it's more about using new technologies to deliver in a new way. So I think for the supply chain specialists, it's all about trying to think critically and trying to stay on top of all the new available technologies, of all the ideas that are going on, and testing with their suppliers whether there is something that can be made to change the way that we're delivering.
Mm-hmm. I understand, and this is your angles are from very different realities that you are, experiencing at work, and it's interesting because this upcoming and the new reality of the supply chain fully digitalized is somehow putting the talent off, and it scares us. Okay, do I take an MBA in digital marketing or in AI or digital twin? So I think it's becoming a reality in many corporations that I worked in. Statistical forecasting is a job by itself. You cannot perform statistical forecasting if you are not a mathematician or very bright. So it's a technical skill required to perform that specific job. So it's so diverse, the menu of technical skills and digital skills required from somebody who wants a career in supply planning or in demand planning. I think it comes with a lot of technical skills. And I would say that the tech-driven supply chain landscape is very different from a company, from an industry to another. And it's exactly what we are saying, what you are saying.
Totally, Anna, totally. And I think it's more probably of an indirect impact on ourselves from being a holiday company. But hopefully, if there's efficiencies there in our supply chain, that can then help our guest experience, because hopefully AI will preempt problems before they happen and we don't have to go around busily trying to fix them. So I'm quite interested in it, but I can see that in certain industries there could be certain concerns.
But could I just add, and I agree with what you're saying, in that space we're all different, but also it depends on what the person wants, what they want to do in the supply chain space. So as I mentioned before, you can be a generalist and you're looking at the holistic picture, but if you're more, you want to work in something more technical and you want to kind of go into data and analytics and everything, there's space for that as well. So I suppose it's just understanding what your own, kind of aspirations are, and then act accordingly.
Yeah.
Exactly, Julia. At the end, it's about your career ambitions, and I said, I think we are in full agreement that this beautiful job is so generous. This supply chain career is so generous in so many ways because you have a diversity of roles that you can pursue. And I would like us to talk about something which I'm really passionate about, the culture, because if the skills are there, if the right talent is there, if we, let's say we have the right people with the right processes, but if we don't have the right culture, good people are leaving. And we saw the big reshuffle immediately after the pandemic, with people waking up and realizing life is more than a job, or my job is not fulfilling, or actually, what am I doing here? Just pressing these buttons or running these reports. I want something more meaningful. And also, people realized about the culture. Oh, my boss has been bullying me, because when you have the time to reflect at home, you realize, and this reflection time gives you, the purpose, and look inside yourself, the man in the mirror, like Michael Jackson says, the change starts with yourself. So, Samantha, from your experience, how companies, how important is the culture and the right supportive environment to retain talent and to foster talent in supply chain?
I think long term, it's really important because there's certain benefits, there's certain things that people will stick for in the short term. But like you said, and I think, the COVID era gave us all chance to reflect on what really is important to us. And definitely the younger generations coming through, they're quite happy to say, no, this isn't for me. And I really kind of applaud them for that. And I think it is really important. I've been with Centre Parcs 14 years. Had the culture not been right, I would not be there. Because as much as I enjoy my role and I enjoy the people I work with, I want to work for the right culture. It is really important. It is really important to me. And I think if people are in a culture where there isn't blame, you can grow, you can get things wrong, but it's safe, and there's no judgment there. You get the best out of them longer term. They're happier, they're more engaged, they're more effective. You're more efficient as a department because you're not constantly having to go to market to retrain and to find talent. And so I would actually say, for me personally, it's number one. And as a leader, I think it's really important that I also live that culture for my team, because I just think that we've got a really important role in order to do that as well, and make sure that right culture and environment is there for them.
Thank you, Samantha. This is brilliant. Leading by example and fostering the right culture for the right reasons, and people will stay.
Yeah.
What's your experience in terms of culture, in terms of the social aspect of ESG, which comes with human rights, with labor conditions, and the right employee conditions? What's your experience?
I think it's extremely important in terms of talent retention, the way that you treat your people. So in the energy industry, for example, due to the challenges that I mentioned before, we are looking at attracting 400,000 more people by 2050. That's a huge chunk. And and you need not to lose the people that you have, plus attract more. And how can you do this? You can only do this by showing them that they're valued, they can be themselves, they will be invested in into their development, career development. So I think it's critical, really. In terms of all the DI objectives, I think National Grid is doing really well. So I'm personally, as you mentioned before, I'm a co-chair of Women in National Grid, so I'm really passionate about gender equality, and I'm happy to say that National Grid actually made it already, not the first year, but made them to top times top 50 for gender equality, employees for gender equality. So I think it's just, it's a holistic approach. Again, like I was talking about holistic approach to supply chain, let's talk about holistic approach to people on the job. So whether they're supported on the job with their career development, that they can see that there's a difference between empowerment and abandonment. So you want to give them enough freedom so they feel empowered, but you want to give them enough support so they don't feel abandoned. But also at the same time, you're looking at the mix of people you have in the team, and having that diversity of thought is critical, isn't it? If you have, 10 people who are absolutely the same, you're only going to end up with one idea. So having that diversity is extremely important as well. So yes, I think absolutely culture is critical for fostering that talent and not losing it.
The right culture, diverse culture, very inclusive culture, equitable culture, yes, diversity of thought, as you said, Yulia, because we need introverts as much as we need extroverts.
Absolutely. And I would say that there is a book that I read recently, actually called Quiet, and that is about the value of introverts. So I would definitely, although we were talking with Samantha about importance of building relationships and interpersonal skills, but really the introverts, they have so much to give. So if you are not really ready to talk a lot, that doesn't matter. That doesn't mean that you cannot be in the supply chain team, right?
Yeah, there's roles and skills for everybody, isn't there? Definitely. Yeah. And I think then as a leader, what you need to do is make sure that you're playing to the skills of those people. The introverts in our department, they're very observant. So then I will probably on a one-to-one ensure that they've got a voice, because I think everybody needs a voice and everyone needs a development plan that is individual to them. I think gone are the days are, this is how we do it. You come in, you sit here for 5 years, this will be how you train. This is what, that has gone. Not everybody wants the same things. And I think that's probably the first thing to sit down with your team. What is it that you want? What do you want to achieve? And how can I help you?
Exactly, Samantha. And I want to address a public thanks to our producer for bringing women in this call, women in leadership, because supply chain in leadership. And I think this is a beautiful testimony that we are doing the right thing and we are promoting by leading by example women in leadership in supply chain. So we need advocates in men in promoting more women, but I think each and every one of us are playing their part. I'm also very passionate about gender diversity in my company, in my startup. I brought a man because I believe I need more analytical and I need a different generations than me, because I need diversity of thought, diversity of gender is welcome. Sometimes I'm too passionate. I'm taken over by emotions. We need differences. Differences are good, as well as the culture is based on healthy foundation of respect.
Yeah. Totally, Anna, but I think if the culture isn't there, you won't be able to get the best out of those people with those different views, because they need the right culture and able to share their views, even if that is against probably the view of somebody who's more senior. So I think without the right culture, you then won't get the benefits of that diversity of thought, really.
Exactly. Time flies quickly when we have such a beautiful topic, which is like never-ending topic. Thank you, Eshwar, for so many questions. I think asked so many questions and we couldn't keep up with replying. I would like to award you with a Supply Chain Talk mug. So well done. Thank you for attending and for asking such beautiful questions. I would invite Yulia and Samantha, maybe we can reply to Eshwar's questions host this live event. I would like in our, before we close our supply chain talk, I would like to invite you both to address in a very concise manner one closing thought in relation to how companies would nurture their next supply chain generation. Your closing thoughts, Samantha.
My closing thoughts are probably that we just need to make sure that they are individual, that we make sure that we're not just putting a one-size-fits-all route to development on our teams, and we're making sure that people are getting the best out of themselves in the workplace.
Love it. I love it. Julia, your closing thought?
Totally agree with Samantha. It's all about individual approach, isn't it? I would probably add to that is just highlighting how exciting it can be. Because I think, from somebody outside, what is supply chain? Well, like, how do you manage it? Is it really an interesting career path? So just, outlining how exciting career you can build in this space and what it entails. And I think, as we discussed today, there are different roles and different ways you can look at it, whether you're analytical, whether you're, more generalist, whether you like building relationships, which is great. So just, understanding the opportunities and understanding what supply chain is, maybe talking to people who are already in that profession if you're just making the first steps. And if you're not, then absolutely agree, networking and understanding how, like, what's happening in other organizations, and what are the opportunities, how we can grow and develop in that. So that would be from me.
Yeah, sorry, I'm not cutting you off. It's just that we are running out of time. And from my side, as you know, my closing thought is succession planning. I worked for big organizations and I was shocked they didn't have succession planning in place. With what's going on in the world, with so many critical services that we need, with so many critical products that our kids need, we need clear, structured, and very healthy succession plans. So dear leaders in this call, don't forget about drafting collaboratively with your people department succession plannings. I would like to thank you both, Samantha and Julia, for your contribution to our beautiful masterclass, the way I like to call it. Leadership and career growth is a very never-ending story and topic. So maybe we can allocate some more time in the future. I would like to see you again in our supply chain talk. I would like also to invite our guests and viewers to the next episode, which is the same time next Wednesday, Reimagining Reverse Logistics, Navigating Costs and Trends, Fast Fashion Returns. So if you are very into fast fashion, please attend. And thank you so much. Thank you for being here and wishing you all the best. Bye-bye.